Hi, friends. This is Sunil Chandy from Christ Church, and we're doing a regular daily program, Food for Thought. And I want to thank you for being with us today. We have about 5 people already who are live with us, and just wanted to ask you to just say hello so that we could touch base with you, see how you're doing, and just to connect with you, because that's the intent of our program. And we have about 25 people on our various other website platforms as well. And so just reach out and say hello. And we got, there she is, Marcia. Thank you. Hello to you. Thank you for being with us. Steve, thank you for this. I love that picture of you guys. And Natalie, of course, thank you. Good afternoon. Natalie and I have been on meetings all through the whole day yesterday. And Jan is here too. Thank you, Jan, for joining us. This is a great day indeed. It's a beautiful day outside, and I was reminded by the guest today that we have to enjoy the nature. I was following our guest on a post that she did on Facebook, and it was just a wonderful post about as she woke up, she looked out into the garden, and there were some beautiful flowers that she had nurtured, and it was as if they were saying good morning, good morning. And she took time to pause and to look at those flowers, to relish the beauty and enjoy the moment of it. And so in this time of great challenge, where when we could look at all the things that we don't have, all the challenges that we face, especially the challenge of the COVID virus and its implications for our economy, the way of life we're living, all of that. We could focus on those things and kind of focus inward to the point where we say, woe is us, woe is me. I'm in the midst of this thing that's overwhelming and too much. But then we could always focus our eyes outward, looking outward and seeing and searching for the beauty that's in our lives. It might be just simply walking out the door and looking out at nature and seeing how the grass is growing, the trees are blooming, the flowers are vibrant with color or coming about to that fullness of joy, joyful color that they have. Or it could be just looking, at the people that we have in our lives. The opportunity that we have to connect with them in a new way, especially when we who might have been very busy all of our life running the treadmill of life, and we never noticed or never really, we look at our, at least for me, we look at achievements and we list all the things that we have to do, and then we cross them off the list. And I got to tell you, even family was on that list for me. Get the kids to school, check. Make sure that they have their food, prepare breakfast or get lunch for them, and then check. But now we have an opportunity to pause and to turn around and orient ourselves to them even and say, thank you for being who you are. Thank you, God, you're a great person. Yeah. You remind me of me. No, I'm kidding. But I think what I think I'm saying is, just using this opportunity to see the blessings in our life. And they are blessings. Yesterday we had a wonderful guest, Jerusalem Greer, and she pointed to one of her books that she wrote, which I'm going to pick up, At Home in This Life. And she spoke really about a passage from Jeremiah, in which Jeremiah, the prophet, is preaching to an Israel that is in the midst of exile. And they're in a situation where they don't want to be. And Jeremiah is telling them to lean into the situation, to thrive even in that situation, to find joy in that situation, to find the blessings that are there, and to live with a passion, live with hope, so that we don't get mired in hopelessness, and despair. So I am so very happy to have our guest today. Deborah Royce has agreed to come again and be with us, as we know her in our community as a wonderful citizen of Westerly. Both she and her husband Chuck live in our town, and they spend part of their time here and also in Greenwich, Connecticut. And she's actually going to be streaming from there right now. But we also know some of her background. She is an actress in film and television, and she is a writer and author of the successful book Finding Mrs. Ford, and she's served on many boards and does many things for our community. And she has a good heart. The reason why I invited her was because the last conversation we had was just so very insightful, and Deborah is so well read, and I really crave to know what she's reading, because she's a very positive and hopeful person, and that orientation is something that's worth listening to. And so Ben, would you invite Deborah Royce to come and join us in our conversation? Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Namaste. How are you?
I am doing well. Very well. I'm in a different room than I was last time,
I
in a
noticed.
different house. So here we are.
Yeah.
It is so gorgeous. It is full spring, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah. And you've been, and the thing is, you just came over there last night, it seems like. I think you were probably in Florida somewhere, or?
Yeah, I had been in Florida on a book tour for the paperback version of my first book, Finding Mrs. Ford, when all of this really, there was a moment where people were still in motion. We all know this, and we were kind of moving and going. And then there was a moment where it became apparent that we should stop. And I was in Florida at that moment with my husband, one of my daughters, my son-in-law, and my 1-year-old granddaughter. So happily for me, I got to stop at a moment where this baby turned 1 and started walking, and it was very sweet. I feel like I got to participate in something that, excuse me. I know I don't get real phone calls anymore. I don't know if anybody does, but I just look at it. It always says possible spam. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's okay. You were talking about your granddaughter?
Yes. So I got to live in close proximity with her for almost 3 months, which I don't know if we will ever have that opportunity again. So it was very sweet to see her at different points in the day, every day.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, so this challenge caused you to be able to kind of focus in and orient yourself to her and to your family. And what I noticed sometimes about even my children now, when I'm speaking with them, I'm noticing things about them, that I never even had time to notice before. I never took them in as much as I am now, just noticing who they are as people, noticing their different strains of personality. And really, I think that's part of what this time has caused me to do,
I think you're right. And I think one of the keys to having a meaningful life and kind of bending time, if you will, slowing things down intentionally, is paying attention. When I was in college, I lived in a dorm like most people do. And these girls were playing this game. And the game was describe another room, a room that you're not in. In my case, it was the ladies' bathroom. And it was very hard to describe a room that I wasn't in at the moment. It was hard for me to remember exactly what the wallpaper looked like, exactly what the faucets looked like, how was the tile on the floor. And I learned that I'm a word person. So if I want to remember something, everybody's different. So if I, like right now, I'm looking at a lamp. And if I look at that lamp and I say it's, an off-white crackle glaze with blue flowers and blue grapes or whatever I say about it, I will remember it better. So that's my little trick and observation, is to stop and look at something and couple it with words.
Wow, it's beautiful. And I could actually, when you described it, I could actually see that lamp in that way. I mean, it's going to be maybe a little bit different than maybe what you see, but I see where you, in my mind's eye.
And some people are completely visual and they don't have to do it that way. They can just look at it and remember it. For me, there's something about naming it. Maybe that's why I'm a writer, or because the words are extremely important.
Yeah. And I also think, yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. I also think that, right now, people have the opportunity to use their imagination to inspire them. And writers like you, and I'm hoping even the people that you read inspire us to imagine a future past even what we're experiencing now, incorporating what we're experiencing now, learning the lessons of the moment, but also imagining a future that's hopeful.
Well, I think for many of us in this modern era, we live in a time of antibiotics and ease of travel. We often believe that, whatever we can fix, whatever comes along.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's happening with this virus for many of us is we're placing ourselves more into the sweep of history. Like we look at going back to the time of the Bible, before that, after that, but really thinking about the written word and what we know about. We know there have been wars and there have been famines and there have been diseases, and we see the sweep of history in the past. And suddenly I think we find ourselves in a moment that is so acute. I would call it acute. There's this sense of something dangerous is looming. We don't know where it's exactly coming from, how to avoid it, what to do. Are we at risk? Are we not at risk? So here we are in kind of a large time, if you will. This is a large event. However you look at it, it's big. And we have no idea when it will end. And I think, so it's helpful to read, to watch movies, for me, that look at the human experience, because we're in it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And we're, we were talking right before about this food for thought thing, and I said to you, I'd never imagined I'd be doing anything like this while I was in seminary, and yesterday I had a conversation with Jerusalem Greer from the National Episcopal Church. She's the National Evangelism chair, and it just reminded me, and we were talking about how this moment is so unique for us, and we're making things up as we go along. We're adapting ourselves to the moment, and so I think that's what I'm finding kind of scary, but also hopeful. Because I'm realizing that I don't have to do it all by myself. This is when I reach out to people like you reach out to people like Jerusalem and people in the church, each other, to kind of do it together. We imagine a future together.
Right. I think one of the most meaningful conversations right now, human to human, is how do you do it? How do you get through the day? What do you use? What works for you? Because we have our own bag of tricks that we may or may not have really cultivated. And I think we really have an opportunity to cultivate that bag of tricks now. And the question I have really for everybody I talk to is, what are you going to do differently going forward? My husband and I have led very busy lives, very, very busy lives. I personally would like to change the rhythm of my life going forward. I don't want to be on lockdown forever, but I also don't want to go to the full kind of plate spinning circus that it often felt like. So how do we take charge and make decisions of how we're going to spend our time?
Yeah. And what are you reading in terms of helping you with that kind of imagination of the future?
My reading divides really by time of day. So when I get up in the morning, I have had a meditation practice for over 30 years. I am not a great meditator. Like a lot of people will say, oh, I meditate for an hour and these are the images I see and the colors of this and that. For me, meditation is a strain. I have a very active monkey mind, to use that expression.
Yeah.
And for many years, in my 30 plus years of meditating, I mostly avoided meditation. That's the kind of meditation practice I had. So some years ago, I can't even remember how many, I figured out a little routine for what I do. I get up and I have coffee. I always have coffee first, not a lot, but I have a little cup of coffee and I read something then. So it could be, it might be something from the Bible. It might be a Christian writer, might be a Buddhist writer. It might be a Hindu writer. I might draw from any traditions. Right now I'm reading Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. She's a big teacher of the Course in Miracles. So I will sit and have my coffee and read a chapter of that. And then I do my meditation. I usually sit in one place. I usually light a candle, maybe have incense. I might not. I might sit somewhere else. So I'm working with a guided meditation now, a Christian guided meditation called Soul Time. That I think I mentioned it last time we were together. Maybe I'd heard the Archbishop. What is his name?
William Carey. No.
It's not Rowan Williams. You know who I mean.
Yeah.
Justin Welby.
Yes.
Justin Welby recommended this. So Soul Time is about 4 minutes. So I will listen to that. It's on your phone. It's this woman with this beautiful, soft Irish voice, and she'll give a little Bible passage and walk you through a meditation focusing on, fear or anxiety or trust or big topics. So I'll do that. And that's kind of the morning reading. I don't often read in the course of the day because I'm writing or working on something. Evening reading often is fiction. I enjoy something for me about stories, fictitious stories. I find that there are great truths in fiction. So I'm reading a book now by Lee Woodruff. She wrote a fiction book called Those We Love Most. And she and her husband had written a memoir together. Bob Woodruff, was a reporter, and he was injured, I think, in Iraq. And they wrote a book together about his traumatic brain injury and the healing from that and the impact it had on them. I think that was called In an Instant. So I'm just finishing up her novel right now, and that's a very powerful book. It begins with the death of a child.
Mm.
So you are really slammed at the beginning. Very deep and insightful book, because it's told from the point of view of multiple members of one family. The mother of the child, her mother, and her father. Those are really the voices you hear. And they're regular people coping with this grief, but they're flawed people, and they each have aspects of themselves that are good, and aspects of themselves that probably could be improved. But yet it's a wonderful story of this family.
Well, and so anything, and they're dealing with a crisis, or they're dealing with a crisis situation, and it could even parallel some of our own, own dealings with our own crises as home as well. I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm a more how-to type of person. I'm used to reading, nonfiction. The idea about, tell me what to do and how do you do it. How do you be the successful person that you need to be? How do you deal with these particular challenges? How do you do theology well, interact? And so it's more of that type of reading. And I find myself now reading more novels. I mean, and part of it is, and when I was younger, I used to read a great deal of fictions. The books on the Hobbit and so forth, and I used to be a comic book reader too, a very big comic book reader. But it's interesting how fiction can actually help you imagine something, and help you, because the people who write are deeply thinking about particular issues as they make up the plot and the storyline. I mean, I loved reading your book. It was just really great, because it gave a sense of history while also giving a new situation, a challenge, and then you got some real interesting insights about people and how flawed they are as they face their challenges. And it's inspirational, because the character.
Well, think about The Wizard of Oz. When my children were younger and they had to, do book reports, I would always give them the example of The Wizard of Oz. There's the plot of The Wizard of Oz. That's just the story. Miss Gulch, the dog bites Miss Gulch. She comes on the bike. She takes the dog. There's a storm, etc., etc., etc. That's the plot. That's one aspect of fiction. But then there's the theme, which is really what we're reading for now. And C.S. Lewis talks about rereading. But in The Wizard of Oz, the theme is there's no place like home. And you always had it within you all along. That's what they're telling in that whole meandering plot. The yellow brick road and the scarecrow and this and that and the witch and that. All of that is happening so that you, the reader, or in the case of the movie, you, the movie viewer, come to understand, I have everything I need right here. There's no place like home. It's here. So that was the illustration I used for my kids. With the nonfiction book I'm reading right now is C.S. Lewis's book on reading. And he talks about the joys of rereading. And I would say it's often in rereading a book that you come to the next thing. The first time you're going through just for everything that happens. If you allow yourself to reread something, and I don't mean right away, just by and by when it strikes you and you pick up that book again, something much deeper resonates if it's a good book, much deeper. Not that you missed it the first time, but you can really focus on it the second time.
That's my experience of reading the Bible, actually. It's,
right.
And the way I look at it is that, and sometimes in our Episcopal Church, we have the 3-year lectionary cycle, and we read a passage, and then 3 years later it comes back. And when it comes back, I'm at a different time in my life, and I'm engaging in that particular piece of literature in a different way, with new eyes almost.
That's right. I reread Little Women in the past year before the new movie came out. And it was a completely different book than the one I read when I was, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. Completely different book. And the same thing is true of Tom Sawyer. You read it at such a different level, whether it's for the deeper themes or even the humor. I mean, of course, Mark Twain is just hilariously funny in a way that you might not so much get when you're young.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. But I think that's who we are as people too. We exist on different levels. You know, if we look at ourselves realistically, we are such a mixed bag of qualities and aspects. And if we really look at other people in this paying attention thing we're talking about, whatever they're doing, even the people who are hurting us, if we think about the complicated layers that exist in them, it really can be transformative.
Yeah, and that's the one thing even with reading good writing, the understanding of the various layers, and then, because a writer gives you not just one view of a character, you get to see different parts of that character and understand, their life circumstances a little bit, if the writer explains that a little bit. And then that you could take that learning and apply it in your own life, understanding that people, even all people are frail, and they have their really wonderful aspects of them, and then there's their not so pleasant moments and experiences we have with them, and then we just somehow learn to accept them because of who they are, and maybe understand them a little bit more with compassionate eyes. That's kind of what my reading that I'm drawn to helps me to find that type of wisdom, I think. Because I many times when I'm dealing with people, I tend to kind of see them face value at the very, just for who they are at the very beginning, just as they present themselves. But then then I react to them accordingly. But then if I take a step back, I'm able to appreciate some of their history, some of their upbringing, and even think about how my upbringing kind of helps to perceive them in a particular way. It helps me to be a better human being, I think. I hope.
Well, I think that's a good question. How do we become better human beings? What do we draw from? We have to cultivate our spiritual selves and our intellectual selves and our emotional selves. And, we've learned in the last 50 years, we have to cultivate our physical selves. I think, up to a certain point in the 20th century, people were looking to do less physically, move less. It was a sign of advanced culture. You didn't have to work in a field. You could take it easy. And now we realize, well, we got that a little bit wrong. We have to do something. But yeah, there's so many aspects of ourselves that need attention.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting to focus on, in reading and in watching movies, big periods of history, reading things about World War I or World War II, or these big sweeps of history, we can see ourselves more where we are now and that this is transient.
Yeah. Well, I know that as we continue to talk with you, you're going to help us figure this out, I think, because you have this ability to really articulate, how culture impacts us in a way, and our reading and our you help us in that way. I mean, this is the second time I've gotten a great deal of insight from this conversation. Deborah, you're just a wonderful lady. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. And I hope that you'll be coming to visit with us in Westerly soon enough.
We will be up there in the coming weeks. I know that Westerly has been concerned about out-of-state people returning, and we're moving gently, slowly to come back. We can't wait to be there. We're taking it easily. We are in good health, knock on wood, and hope to stay that way.
Yes, we're looking forward to having you back. And
Thank you.
And I think all of Westerly knows how important it is to have all of our family gathered together again, from different states and so forth. And and that I think is the general feeling that most of us have. There might be some people who might be scared a little bit, but not everyone.
Understandably.
Yeah. All right. Well, Deborah, thank you. And please tell Chuck I said hello. And I'm looking forward to getting him on one of these days to talk about the United Theater and all what you're doing with that.
He would love that.
All right. Thank you. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye. Folks, again, just another wonderful conversation. There are several books that Deborah reminded us of. And so Lee Woodruff's book, that might be really good. And I got to tell you, Soul Time by Justin Welby. I got caught in a moment where I didn't know the name of our Archbishop of Canterbury. And I know him. And I follow him on Twitter. And I'm so sorry. I had like one of those brain freeze moments. So if my bishop is listening to this, Bishop Knisley, or Archbishop or our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, if you're listening to this, please know I do know who Justin Welby is. Well, anyway, let's say a prayer for our life in the midst of this coronavirus. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support medical professionals, emergency responders, teachers and students, and our caregivers. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us on temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace and spread that light of Christ, that light of hope and of joy to the world. The world needs it right now. Thank you.